How much money are you losing simply because doing nothing is easier? Most people do not like change, and it is easier just to continue going forward with your current situation rather than making a drastic change in your life. And status quo bias is preferring to keep things the same just because, changing is hard. A lot of people avoid making decisions because it's difficult, right? But actually choosing to do nothing or avoid a decision is a decision in itself. And it's important to think about that and realize that that is a thing that you are doing. Now, in personal finance, there's a lot of different ways that this can apply, and we're going to get into them in the video. But I want to talk first a little bit about the human psychology of why this happens. Making a change takes effort, and maybe you do not have the time in your life, or you think you don't have the time in your life to create a change in a personal finance aspect, right? Maybe in changing insurance, changing banks, things like that. It takes a lot of time, and some people just see it as, whatever, I'll just deal with it how it is now. A lot of times new options create uncertainty as well. They're like, oh, well, if I change insurance, how do I file a claim? I've never done it through this insurance provider, right? You can see kind of how the uncertainty appears in all kinds of different aspects. People fear regret as well. What if I was doing this thing and it was so great and I change and now it's not great at all? And I've said this in a previous video as well, but losses feel worse than equivalent gains, right? Losing $1,000 feels worse than gaining $1,000. And a lot of times, with not making a decision at all, it's the familiarity with what we're already doing that keeps people where they are now, because they don't like change. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is default options in your life, right? Let's say there's two companies, for example. One of them defaults you into the 401k contributing 6%. When you get hired, you automatically, they sign you up and they take 6% of your paycheck and put it into your retirement account. Now, company B, they don't do any of that. You're required to go in and sign up, right? Whereas option A, you have to opt out. So the two different decisions, the first one you have to opt out, and the first one you have to opt in. And most people will just delay opting in, but opting out seems a lot easier. Maybe they're like, I want to keep more of my money, I'll just opt out. And a lot of times what you're doing by default will just, keep happening because people are lazy and they don't want to change. And with this retirement account example, sometimes our personal finances, what we're doing is what happens automatically, not necessarily what is actually best for you, right? Now, the big ways I see this helping and hurting people in their personal finances is insurance. Premiums go up every year, but no one ever shops around. They just keep paying the additional, price. I see this really bad with subscriptions as well. Maybe the prices are going up and you don't choose whether you pay them every month. They just come out of your bank, they come out of your debit account and it just pays them. And really, if you're just too lazy to cancel it, that's eating away a ton of disposable income that you have. But once again, going in and actually doing an action is what people are not doing to cancel these. Another big one I see is banking. People sign up for bank accounts when they're like 16, when they get their first job or whatever, and they stay on this bank account for eternity, right? I actually used to work at a bank, and they had a huge initiative to go after high school kids to get them to sign up, because once you get them to sign up, you're like a customer for life, basically. And just because you have a bank account and maybe a savings account, that doesn't mean that it's great. A lot of times there's way better rates out there that exist in like a high yield savings account, but their bank offers 1 or 2% and they're just like, but then I got to get a whole new bank, right? And I understand it's a whole hassle to do all that, but you're making a decision and losing money because you're doing nothing. Another way I see this is a job. A lot of times I've seen people, let's say they make $60,000, and if they move to another job, they'll make 80. And they don't want to because it's new, uncomfortable, maybe the longer commute, right? There's pros and cons of all of it. So they just don't leave. And let's say, you're going from 60 to 80K. Every year you're just writing a $20,000 check. It doesn't feel like that, obviously, because you don't make $80,000, but in reality, that is what you're doing. You would make $20,000 more if you were to switch jobs. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't switch jobs. It's just kind of a mental exercise that we're doing here. Another huge one I see people do is investments. Maybe in 2020 they put money into something and they're still just like letting it sit in there now. And maybe this person has redone their investment goals and what they're investing in, and that security no longer lies in those goals, but they're still just staying and holding it because it's a pain to sell it, or maybe you have to pay taxes on it when you sell it, and then you got to figure out what you need to put it in now, right? Realistically, that doesn't fit in your investment goals, then you shouldn't be buying and holding it, right? And you tend to just keep this investment you own because you bought it a while ago, not because you'd buy it again today, right? For investing though, the inverse can be true. If you're constantly just buying and selling stuff, that's probably also not great. So there's a fine middle line where you need to operate when it comes to investing, buying and holding, that sort of thing. Does this fit in my portfolio's goals and needs, right? So I think the too much action and not enough action are two separate problems with investments specifically. Now I want to talk a little bit about how we can get out of this cycle. And the best question you can ask yourself is, if I didn't have this, would I do it or choose it today? And we can ask this about all kinds of different things in our lives, like we talked about insurance, bank accounts, investments, subscriptions, right? If I didn't have this, would I still buy it? And I think that is really the way to get out of doing nothing, right? And I think you should be reevaluating your personal finances at least maybe twice a year, once a year, where you go through everything and determine, do I need this? Is there a better option out here that's better, bang for my buck type of thing? And I think a lot of people just get comfortable and they don't do any of those things. And I think this causes them to silently lose money by doing nothing over the years that they are doing these things, or I guess not doing these things. And when this happens and you lose all this money because of the inability to make a decision or move to a new thing because you do not like change, I think you're setting yourself back. I think you would have more money in your pocket to be able to do things like invest and save or pay off debt if you were just more aware of the options out there and aware of what you need to do to make yourself maybe a little happier by canceling some of this stuff. And I am not a financial professional, but that's just my opinion on this topic. Thanks for watching.